Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am the host, Jesse Jackson. We're getting off the Bruce train, though I have already been asked a couple of questions by Ryan, which are very heavy Springsteen related. Joining me tonight is my good friend Ryan, who is a fellow podcaster. And we're here to talk a little bit of music. I think we're going to talk about Bruce's upcoming biopic, and who knows what else. So, Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here, Jesse.
Yeah, so tell us a little about yourself.
So I host a podcast called Soundtrack Your Life with Nicole Barlow. Nicole and I have been friends for a very long time. We always talk about music, so we ended up making a podcast about it. So we interview different people about their favorite soundtracks and why. Jesse, you've been a guest. We've talked about Blinded by the Lights. Um,
Yes.
we we've had other podcasters, music writers, composers, and people from like different aspects of the film industry. We've had directors of documentaries and such. All come on. They've all come on to talk about their soundtracks of choice, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I know that we're here to talk about one of your favorite bands, but you right before we hit record, you asked me that you had some questions about the upcoming Bruce film biopic. I could just start blurbing, but I'll let you ask the question before I rudely start giving answers.
Yeah, so I heard recently that there is a Bruce Springsteen biopic coming out, which is going to focus on Bruce because we already did
Yes.
Blinded by the Lights. So this is going to be about Bruce during the Nebraska phase of his career, and it is going to be, and Bruce will be played by Jeremy Allen White, who is most famously of The Bear, which Nicole and I are huge fans of. So
Yeah.
since you are our Bruce Springsteen expert, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts about the film and Jeremy Allen White as Bruce.
Yeah, thank you so much. First off, I did not watch Shameless, so was not aware of him till I started watching The Bear. I was late to The Bear. The first season had already been out, and I kept hearing people, "Oh, it's great." And so on one of those nights, I don't really have anything on the DVR or anything on there. I didn't care about it. I pulled it up and just binged it right away and just loved it. He also was really good in The Iron Claw. I don't know if you saw that movie, but
I
it's a
haven't, but I've heard similar
yeah,
things.
he's my son is a huge wrestling fan, and the Von Erichs were Dallas royalty. We went and we just loved the film. I think he's a really strong actor. And if you look at pictures of Bruce during that time, it's close enough, all right? I think he looks like him. I don't know if you've read the book, but Delivery from Nowhere is the book that Warren Zane put out last year that focuses on the making of Nebraska. Have you read the book?
I have not.
Okay. It's a really good book, whether you're a Bruce fan or not. The premise of the book, and it's almost a mystery, Ryan, is that, okay, Bruce had put out The River, his first double album. Hungry Heart was his first top 40 hit. It was all of a sudden his first true commercial success. Even though Born to Run was a hit and Darkness on the Edge of Town, critically loved, but The River got them, Hungry Heart got them on the radio for the first time. And Lil Steven has talked about in interviews that if you're on the radio, you get the girls. And if you get the girls, the guys come to things. So you have your first taste of commercial success. Then skip ahead. The next album after Nebraska is Born in the USA, which arguably is his most commercial release. It made him a superstar. It 7 top 10 hits off the album, and even the songs that aren't necessarily hits are like Bobby Jean was never released as a single, but it's a staple, right? The book's premise is why did Bruce have to take a step backwards before doing Born in the USA? And that's the premise. And it goes into, and I don't know how much you're aware of Nebraska. I don't want to bore you if I'm telling you the same thing you already know.
I know the songs. I don't know
Okay.
the story of the album.
Okay. So the story is Bruce had a guy go buy a really nice, like, 4-track player that was the best of the kind at there. And he recorded all of the songs as a demo and he puts them on a cassette. And he walks around carrying the cassette without the case in his jeans. And the premise was this is the demos, and then the band will try to, this will be the next E Street album. And when he talks about it, and there is a documentary that a PBS special where Warren reads a little bit of the book, but Bruce says every time the band played it, he felt like the characters were getting lost. And in the spirit of there's many people claim success, people raise their hands and everything. I have been multiple people have said this, but this first story I heard is little Steven said, "This is the album. This cassette tape is the album." And so he went to the record company, said, "This is what I want to put out." The book talks about how the record company, as much as you can talk about them not being supportive of an artist, they support the album and he puts it out and he does a tour on it. Because you imagine, okay, hi, we've just had our best radio success. Here's this album. It's just me and a guitar and a harmonica. I don't want my face on the cover. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to tour to support it. Is that okay with you? And so that is the era that the movie is going to be about. And I think it's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah, I
Have
like
you?
how it, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think I like that they're just covering like a small era of his career instead of trying
Yeah.
to shove it all into one movie. Because I think a lot of biopics try to do that these days and they're not as successful as if they just were to focus.
Yeah, like the Queen and the Elton John, Love and Mercy, I thought worked really well. That's one of my favorite films
Yeah,
because
that
I'm a
was
huge
good.
Brian Wilson fan, because they did two specific parts of Brian Wilson's life, recording Pet Sounds and then his meeting Melinda and going that with Landy. I think that gives you the two sides and it makes for a really, I think, interesting film that shows the creativity of, I think, those scenes in the studio where, and what I've read is they were actual, not necessary actors, they actually hired musicians so that they could recreate that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The resume of the people doing it is certainly respectable, and I guess Jeremy is going to sing the songs. And I guess in an interview, Bress said he thinks he sounds pretty good. So I think it'll be a really cool film, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. All right. So I wanna hear us. Let's talk a little bit first. Let's talk about the band you want to talk about. So share a little bit of who we're going to talk about and explain why, Ryan.
We are going to talk about The Replacements today, and that means the band, not the Keanu Reeves movie.
Yes.
They're a band that started in 1979. They broke up in 91,
Okay.
but they're an extremely influential band. I feel like there's a lot of similarities a little bit with Bruce Springsteen as far as why people love them.
Yeah.
I don't think they sound very similar, but I think people resonate with them for similar reasons. They got back in 2013. They got back together in 2012, 2013. I was able to catch them live a few times, and they're just one of my favorite bands.
I always like to start at the beginning, and I'm going to get to the replacements, but talk about growing up and where did you grow up and what kind of music did your family listen to?
So I grew up in the Twin Cities. which
Okay.
is where the replacements are from, and that's probably part of the draw for me.
Yeah.
So I have four older siblings, so I got to experience a lot of music that a elementary school kid probably wouldn't otherwise. And back in the 80s, where I grew up in the Twin Cities, Prince was taken off, and you had the replacements and Husker Du, and then like later Soul Asylum. So it was a very like exciting time for music when I was growing up. So even if I didn't think I was listening to the replacements as a kid, I'm sure that it was like everywhere, like at the mall or,
Yeah.
as siblings were driving the car with the radio on.
Did were and that's a common theme, Ryan, in my podcast about siblings are a big influence on us, whether we're the oldest and we're influencing our younger siblings, or if you're a middle or younger child and your older siblings influence you, either you really embrace their music or sometimes you rebel against it. Oh, okay, they're really into grunge, so I'm going to go into heavy metal or I'm going to do something. Were your parents influenced at all in music?
No, my parents are very old school and immigrated from Korea, so they mostly just listen to Korean music.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Were they just they didn't care that you guys were listening to it, it's just not something they're going to do, right?
Yeah, for the most part, they just let us be. It's what kids did. Obviously, they would tell us to turn it down if they thought it was too loud, but
Of course, that is to be required. So, if you can, you've talked about probably growing up, you heard the replacements either in malls or with your siblings, but if you can, you remember when you actually became aware of them and where you realized you wanted to know more about their music. And if you can articulate why.
I don't remember what year it was, but my sister was flying back from college for the summer for winter break. And I guess she had run into Paul Westerberg at the airport. And Paul Westerberg is the lead singer, main songwriter of the replacements. So
Okay.
she had an autograph from him. And so she brought that home. Obviously was very excited. And I guess since my sister met the guy from the replacements, it was gonna be an important band to me at some she had
Okay.
the CDs already, like of course I was gonna listen to it. She had met this rock star.
Yeah. And as you're listening to it, why obviously you've got a wide variety of love of music. You do a podcast talking about different soundtracks, but what about them puts them in that top spot or one of the top spots for you?
I think a big reason that they resonate with myself and a lot of people is they have a very lyrically, it's a very like hard on the sleeves writing style.
Mhm,
So very it's got great melodies and but also that has that emotional impact,
mhm.
which I think all the best songs have.
Yeah. What So talk to me as you're finding this journey. Talk through me through the journey of exploring their catalog and tell me some stories about that.
Like I said, my sister had some of their CDs, so I would listen to some of those. But I think, ironically, one of the big reasons I got into their music is after they had broken up, Paul Westerberg was commissioned to write some music for the movie Singles,
Okay.
the Cameron Crowe film. So he has two songs on that soundtrack, and I believe he scored it as well.
Okay.
And that soundtrack became like a huge deal to me. Like I listened to it all the time, and you had a mix of like grunge, and you had some Jimi Hendrix, and you had all this different rock music. And it was right at the time where I started discovering like what I liked instead of just what was on the radio.
Mhm. I don't think I've ever seen that film. I'm gonna have to add that to my list because I do love Cameron Crowe. So that's interesting. So as you're going through that and doing that, give me some examples of how those lyrics are speaking to you.
So the first single that he wrote for the movie is a song called Dyslexic Heart.
Okay.
And I guess I mean I was pretty young, so I had to look up what dyslexic was, but
Okay.
To describe not being unlucky at love that way, I thought was a very creative way. I've got a dyslexic heart.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. And so you're finding them, but the band's already broke up, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Now, are you someone at this point, are you thinking that you've missed your chance to see them live and you're wondering just born at the wrong time, right?
Yeah, they had broken up when I was like 9 years old, so I was not
Yeah.
going to be able to go to watch them live.
Uh-huh. And but you continued being a fan. And so talk to me about, and I know nothing about the band. So when they decide to get back together, when you heard about it, what were your thoughts?
I was very excited. There had been rumors, I think maybe 5 or 6 years earlier, that they were possibly going to get back together. And then Paul Westerberg, in just some mishap at home, drove a screwdriver through his hand
Wow,
and he
that's
almost
crazy.
severed his nerves. And he obviously had to heal from that. And it just, I guess one of the things about the replacements is they always felt like they were self-sabotaging themselves. It's part of their
Okay.
lore. And so it was one of those, they were so close, and then another freak accident happens where
Hmm.
it's not going to happen. I was excited it was actually going to happen because it kept feeling like it was getting close, and then something would happen where it would stop it.
Yeah. So you did say you did get to see them. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So the first reunion shows that they announced were to headline Riot Fest, which is a more punk rock focused
Hmm.
festival. And this year, Riot Fest was going to be in three different cities: Chicago, Toronto, and Denver, or
Okay.
outside of Denver. My friend and I went to the Denver show. She went to, I think, all three shows, or at least she also went to the Chicago show.
Yeah.
And at the time, these were the only three for sure happening replacement shows. So I decided that I was going to go to at least one of them.
Okay. And talk to me of the experience. Had you like I will tell you 2002 was the first time I saw Bruce live. I was just thrilled that I didn't care what he was going to play except Born to Run. I wanted Born to Run, and in fact I told my wife after the show, she's, "Did you like it?" Because he did not play a lot of songs that she knew, and there were actually a lot of songs I didn't know. And I said if he had walked on stage, done Born to Run and walked off, I would have been happy. So talk to me about you. What were your expectations when you were getting into this?
So my expectations were that they would play a good show.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was expecting specific songs. I was hoping for a little bit more than a greatest hit set though.
Yeah.
And so we got there and we had to sit through a whole festival day of music,
Yeah.
which was hilarious because you definitely had the younger crowd who were there for the punk bands that were current, and then you had us older people who were
Yeah.
waiting for the replacements to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they played, when they got on stage, it was everything you wanted from a replacement show. They came out in these like really hideous cowboy outfits,
Oh.
and they're pranksters. So they made some joke about the string cheese incident, and instead of having a really elaborate stage setup, they just set up a bunch of lights to look like it was giving you the finger. And they played. It was sloppy, but like everyone was in sync still. Like when you would hear stories about how they were live, you got it all in this evening. Plus,
Hmm.
you got a lot of great songs. The stage banter was really funny between Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson. Tommy, for most of the 90s, was in Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
And at one point, Paul said, "What'd you say, Tommy? Did you say something about the jungle?"
That's
And,
funny.
and then Tommy was like, "Oh, here we go." And he's, "It's not my fault you joined Van Halen."
That's funny. I was just doing a little bit of research before we got here, right? Somehow, infamously, they were banned from Saturday Night Live. Do you want to
Yes.
share that story with us?
Yeah, so they played Saturday Night Live in support of their album Tim, which I believe came out in 1985. They played one song, and then while they were waiting for the to play the second song, they all changed into each other's clothes.
Okay.
and played that second song. And then apparently at the after party, they drank so much that Lorne Michaels did not want them back in that building.
Wow.
Which is funny because Paul Westerberg ended up playing SNL when he was a solo artist in, I believe, 93, 94.
Yeah.
And I've read that people had to keep it very on the down low that this guy was from the Replacements.
Oh, you couldn't tell. Oh,
Yeah,
I
don't
like this
tell.
guy. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
exactly.
That's a great story. Is that the only time you've seen him live?
I saw them two more times. I saw them at their big hometown reunion show in St. Paul,
Okay.
which was about a year later. And I proposed to my wife the next day.
Nice.
I figured since she had decided to make the trip to Minnesota to watch the Replacements with me, I might as well make it worth her while as well.
That's nice. Now, is she a fan?
She thinks they're okay.
Okay. Sometimes mixed marriages work, Ryan.
She allowed me to go to Denver, and then we were
Okay.
dating at the time, and then she went with me to Minnesota. So
Nice.
it shows she's a good
Okay.
sport.
Yeah. And then one other time you've seen.
I saw them in LA, which was near the end of this reunion tour, and I guess they probably won't get back together again.
Okay. Was there anything on the show you had talked about while you were excited to get things you were hoping more than just a greatest hits set? Was there at least one or two songs that you went, yes, that's a deep cut that I'm really thrilled we're getting?
Yeah, they played a song called Nowhere Is My Home, which
Okay.
is a B-side from, I believe, the Tim era, which was really exciting. They also played a song that Paul and Tommy wrote for an animated film called Open Season. So they played the song called Love You in the Fall.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like it's a song for a kid's movie or anything, but
Yeah.
they decided to work that in since they wrote it together. Some people in the crowd were very confused.
That's funny. That's great. So is there the thought, and I take it they're all just continue to do either work with other bands or other solo material?
Yeah, I think Tommy's always working in different bands. I think right now he's working on some solo stuff. Like I said, he was in Guns N' Roses at one point. He's just a lifelong musician. He's
Okay.
played in Soul Asylum for a little bit too.
Mhm.
Paul, I believe, he released a collaboration album with Juliana Hatfield called The I Don't Cares.
Okay.
And I'm sure he's still working on stuff, but he likes to be very covert about when projects are coming out.
Any other thoughts about the replacements? And then I want to talk the podcast a little bit.
Okay. Just to bring it back to Jeremy Allen White, I think in season 2 of The Bear, there's an episode where they use a couple replacement songs, and the episode ends with Carmi and Claire, I think, making out for the first time in What Will Be the Bear, and the song Can't Hardly Wait plays, and it's a very nice moment in the show.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. That's nice. They have good music on the Bear.
They have excellent on The Bear.
Very eclectic and very fun. So, well, good. All right. So, Ryan, let's talk about, once again, give the name of the podcast.
Soundtrack Your Life.
How did this start?
It started as potentially like a blog or some sort of writing site, and then our friend Brandis told us that people don't want to read as much. Maybe you should just do a podcast.
Okay.
And soundtracks are something that I've been very passionate about for a long time. I bought a lot of soundtracks trying to track down all my favorite songs from my favorite bands. I'm sure you've done similar things to
Sure.
complete your Bruce collection. And so we just thought we would start a podcast to talk to people about why they love a certain soundtrack, and it could be because it's their favorite movie, or it could be just because they found like a new band from it, and we wanted to talk to people
Yeah.
about it.
So, are there any parameters you built in when you started doing this of what kind of soundtracks were you interested in talking about? Like, I'm assuming not American Graffiti, right? Which is in a lot of ways the birth of the soundtrack. What is that? Were you wanting something original soundtracks? Were you wanting, did you like the collection soundtracks? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think originally we wanted to talk about these song tracks that had different artists with
Yeah,
songs. Some are original, maybe some previously released, just because we thought it'd be a little bit easier than to just talk about a score for an hour.
sure.
But we have gone into that if people have wanted to. We haven't shied away from it. We've asked people if it's a score that's not particularly famous, is there do
Yeah,
you have
yeah. What?
soundtracks you want to do? And if they're like, no, I just want to do the score, then we'll do the score with them.
Yeah, I just want to talk about Star Trek 2, the score, right? Or Master and Commander. Did what has surprised you after doing? And now, how many episodes are you guys up to?
I think like 110
Okay.
or
What's
105.
yeah, what surprised you about doing this?
I think we found an appreciation for a lot of different movies that maybe we wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Is there episodes where someone came to you with a sound, or I guess, is there one where you're surprised, where you go, "Wow, I really didn't think this would be that interesting a soundtrack, but it was," or something, "I don't know if this will be a very interesting conversation, turned out to be pretty fascinating."
Um, so we had an author on. His name is George Soroy, and he wanted to talk about one of the Transformer movie scores
Okay.
that was done by Steve Jablonsky. And I wasn't sure how much conversation or how much we could get out of that. But he had written a book that where he used the soundtrack to really inspire him. So he would
Oh,
tell me about different scenes in his book where he was like, I was listening to these three tracks like over and
yeah.
over again. And it was helping me get these ideas for my characters here. And so that ended up being a really great conversation.
That sounds like an interesting conversation. How do you find your guests?
Sometimes we have people reach out to us through email. We've had some publicists reach out to us as
Yeah.
well. People have reached out to us on social media saying, "Hey, I'd love to be on the show." And then people that we like to interact with on social media, we've reached out to them as well.
Yeah. Is there film soundtracks that are on your list of, I really hope we can get a guest to talk about them?
Yeah, there are. I'm just making sure that we are not covering them in the
Yeah.
next month.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always soundtracks that I'm hoping people pick. The Mallrats soundtrack from
Be
Kevin
great.
Smith.
Yeah, that
Um,
would be a really good one.
that one was really formative in helping me find new bands. I felt like it was a good kind of
Yeah.
gateway sort of soundtrack. The Suburbia soundtrack, which was directed by Richard Linklater in I think 97 or 98. That's a soundtrack I'd love to talk about. And a couple of comedy films, Walk Hard and Pop Star, we're hoping we're going to cover in the next year.
That's nice. That sounds really good. Yeah. What is there any future plans? Do you guys like what you're doing and just going to keep going for now?
Yeah, I think we're going to keep going for now.
Yeah.
We've had a really good time like doing it and talking to all these different people.
Yeah.
We've met. We have some friends of the podcast that we are really excited that we've made friendships with.
Hmm.
So we're gonna keep going. And then we've had a couple of people reach out about some guests that we're very excited about that I don't want to talk about till the
So
recording
yeah,
is in the can. But that
yes, I know that feeling where you want to go, oh, we're gonna have it, and then ends up, oh no,
yeah.
they ended up not. Again, now I feel silly. Is there? Do you have a Google Doc somewhere that shows the soundtracks you've covered, so that in case someone wants to look and go, oh wow, they haven't talked about blank, I should reach out and visit with them.
Yeah, we do have a Google Doc, and I will share that with you. And you
Nice.
can share it with the listeners here if anyone is interested.
Yeah.
And I had to create it because people were like, "Let me know what you've already covered," and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't have that
I
in
don't
a
have that handy.
centralized place." Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking, going, I really love the film Notting Hill, And I think part of the reason I like it so much is the soundtrack and how well it's worked against that. It works with the film. But then there's others. I remember I Am Sam, where it was nothing but Beatle covers. That was
Paul
a
Westerberg's
fun,
on it,
huh? Yeah.
and Paul Westerberg is on it.
Yeah, that was a fun album because of all these different takes on Beatles songs and not necessarily the ones you would think they would do. So yeah, that sounds good. I will invite myself to look at there and then say, "Hey Ryan, I'd love to talk about this sometime." That
Yeah,
sounds
we'd love
good.
to have you back.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we had a great time talking about it, and I think you go ahead and book me, right? With the Springsteen film, just go ahead, let's pencil me in and we'll talk about that. That'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I always like to ask this, Ryan, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
I think we covered
Good, good.
everything I thought we were going to cover, at least.
Okay, very nice. Good. I end every podcast with what I call the Mary question. And basically, what that is, Jay Armstrong, who is a retired honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area, when he was teaching, he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they would read it as if it was a poem, and then they would discuss the lyrics and they would talk about what imagery Bruce is portraying with the lyrics, what themes he's trying to explore. And then he was asked his class at the end, does Mary get in the car? So Ryan, you said you listened to first I want to hear all the different versions of Thunder Road you may have listened to, and then I'd love to hear your answer. Does Mary get in the car?
To try to get the answer, I listened to obviously the album version.
Yeah.
And then I listened to a couple live versions. I listened to Thunder Road live at the Roxy Theater and another live version, Hammersmith
Yeah.
London 75 show.
Yeah, that's
Just,
the solo one that just him and Roy. Yeah.
just hoping I could maybe get additional information.
Very nice.
Tried to do my research. I do not believe Mary gets in the car.
Okay. You gonna tell me why?
I just feel like part of it is just how the song is melancholy, the
Okay.
melody and the piano. And then I don't know, I just feel like he makes a good case for her to get in the car, but I'm just not convinced that
All right. That's a good answer.
she's not willing to do it.
One of my favorite answers, Ryan, was a guy said it depends. He said if it's Bruce and the band playing, it's she absolutely gets in the car because it ends with Clarence's saxophone and this when it's Bruce solo, she doesn't get in the car because he's like mellow county as he gets. And I was like, I love that answer. I love that answer. So Ryan, that is perfect. I'm so glad you did that. So tell my listeners if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
Email soundtrackcast@gmail.com because Twitter is being weird.
Yes, it is. It
I
is
can't
very
guarantee
weird.
that if you try to reach us there, that we'll see it.
Yeah.
But also, we're at Soundtrackcast on Twitter and on Instagram. If you reach out, we will at least try to reply.
Okay.
But if you don't hear from us for a week, then try the email.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds good. Any final thoughts before I get you out of here?
I really enjoyed talking about the replacements. Like I said, I feel like they share a lot of the same DNA as Bruce and the E Street Band as far as like why people love them. A couple bands that were pretty popular in the past few years, like the Gaslight Anthem and the Hold Steady, find they say both artists are very influential on them. So I feel like they're kindred spirits in a way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so, and I'm going to do a deep dive on theirs. Ryan, this was a blast. Thank you so much. Let's stay in touch. And like I said, send me the document and I'll look and see and I'll reach out to you and maybe we can do this again on your show.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Listeners, thank you for checking out. Go check out the podcast. I think they have a great time discussing a wide variety of soundtracks. It's always an interesting discussion. I love the podcast, so please check it out. And if you and go to iTunes and rate and review them and give them a 5-star review because we all need a little more love. So for now, I'm going to ask everyone to be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.